Hi folks, this video is about the first part of Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is about the pathways that harvest and store chemical energy, which basically means cellular respiration and photosynthesis. Now I'm going to have diagrams throughout this slideshow. However, it'd be great for you to look along in your book in chapters 2.5 and also in chapter 6, and that will help you further understand this. So this first video about chapter 6.1 is the key concept is that there are 5 principles that govern metabolic pathways. Metabolic pathways are just the course of events that happen to lead for that energy harvest or storage. So here we go. Energy, as we know, is stored in chemical bonds, and it can be released and transformed by those metabolic pathways, right? Those chains of events that will help us to either harvest or store energy. So remember here also that energy, it's neither created nor destroyed, it only changes form. This diagram here shows energy being stored in a chemical bond, right? So we have ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and we have an inorganic phosphate here, and it takes energy to bring these together to form ATP. Adenosine triphosphate was actually able to do work, and you can kind of see here looking at this battery, you have 2 low energy molecules. You add energy to put them together and that battery charges. Our free energy, our availability, or our ability to do work increases. This is kind of flashing back to chapter 2.5. Remember that chemical energy available to do work, we call that free energy, or G. And so any change in free energy, sometimes you'll see that called delta G. And if the delta G of a reaction is positive, that means we gained, so let's look over here, we gained free energy, so delta G is positive. We gained energy. Our products have a higher energy than our reactants did. And then just the opposite here, our delta G, we had a change in free energy, is negative because the free energy of our products is lower than that of our reactants. Like I said, there are 5 principles governing metabolic pathways. Alright, and the first is that these chemical transformations occur in a series of intermediate reactions that form that pathway. So again, pathways, metabolic pathway is a chain of events that you can kind of see happening here, and that there's a series of them. So what's happening in the big picture right here is this thing called glycolysis, which is the first step in cellular respiration. And we start out with a 6-carbon molecule, glucose, that we know. And in order to get into cellular respiration, this breaks down into 2 3-carbon molecules called pyruvate. But you don't just go from 6 to 3. It's not just like, oh, I break it apart, hooray. There's this whole stepwise series of events, a series of intermediate reactions. Second big idea is that these aren't spontaneous, or I guess they could be, but in order to catalyze that reaction, in order to make it go faster, we need some enzymes. So you have, in this case, to go from glucose to its next intermediate, you need hexokinase. And you see all these other enzymes needed step by step throughout the pathway. Big idea number 3. Most metabolic pathways are similar in all organisms. So over here you have the metabolic pathway to break down sugars and to get energy out of them. And this over here is what happens in eukaryotes, right? We start out with, we break down glucose with the first step called glycolysis to make those pyruvate. Remember, we had a 6-carbon and then we had 2 3-carbon things. All right, and in eukaryotes, it's going to go then through a whole series of reactions in the mitochondria to make like 30 ATP, 28 to 32. If you are a prokaryote, like a bacteria or archaea, right, you also do glycolysis in order to get energy. Now, they don't go through all this citric acid cycle. They don't get nearly as much energy, but glycolysis works exactly the same in both eu and prokaryotes. And this is important because this is evidence of common ancestry. Okay, this is a piece of evidence for evolution. The fourth principle governing metabolic pathways is that in eukaryotes, many of these occur inside specific organelles. If you remember, organelles are important because they allow us to compartmentalize these metabolic reactions, which adds to efficiency. So, for example, you've got your chloroplast for photosynthesis, and you've got your mitochondria for doing some excellent cellular respiration. The fifth and final principle governing metabolic pathways is that these pathways are controlled by enzymes, right? We already saw that they are, like enzymes are involved, but these enzymes can be turned on or off. They can be inhibited or activated depending on, well, whether we need that much energy. So these enzymes being inhibited or activated help us regulate the rate of these reactions. Right? So, again, this is glycolysis that we've been looking at, the first set of reactions that allow cellular respiration to occur. And so, if we have activated enzymes, our process is going to progress through. But if our enzymes, say for instance, are inhibited, then our reaction can only go this far, but this enzyme is inhibited, so it won't go any farther. It'll slow it down if our enzymes are inhibited. So those are the 5 principles governing metabolic pathways. Pick up in the section 6.1b video, and we'll talk all about ATP, coupled reactions, and how ATP actually provides energy.